The council chamber stretched 300 meters across, a vast dome of crystalline walls that reflected the light of 1,000 distant stars. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, as some breathing oxygen, others suspended in liquid chambers, and a few existing as pure energy contained within magnetic fields. At the center podium stood Ambassador Jiwan, a human woman with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too. Many negotiation rooms to be impressed by grandeur. She held up a data tablet displaying the treaty document. The Terran Alliance formally requests Council acknowledgement of our defensive pact with the Velshi people. We commit our military resources to the protection of their 3 colony worlds and pledge mutual cooperation in matters of trade and cultural exchange. The translation completed, and silence filled the chamber. Then someone laughed. It was Lord Veshka of the Dravic Empire, his scaled form rising from a heated stone platform. His species had ruled 17 star systems for 3,000 years, and his voice carried the weight of that authority. Ambassador Jiwan, surely this is an error. The Velshi control 3 water worlds on the edge of mapped space. Their entire population could fit inside one of our colony cities. They produce nothing of value except kelp farms and some moderately interesting poetry. What possible strategic benefit could humanity gain from this alliance? Other representatives murmured agreement. The Quellan delegate, a being of pure thought, whose words came through speakers, added its perspective. Humanity has been part of this council for only 30 standard years. You are still considered newcomers yourselves. Why burden your growing civilization with the defense of a species that cannot possibly repay you? Juan did not smile, but something in her expression suggested she had expected exactly this reaction. The Velshi asked for our friendship. We said yes. That is the entire calculation. Veshka's tail scraped against the stone floor, a sign of agitation among his people. You do not understand how the galaxy works, Ambassador. Alliances are investments. You spend resources protecting someone, they provide resources in return. The strong ally with the strong. This is how civilizations survive. Perhaps Guan said quietly, but that is not how they thrive. Before Veshka could respond, the chamber doors opened and Commander Temin entered in his military uniform. The human officer walked with the deliberate stride of someone who had commanded ships in combat, and the 3 scars across his left cheek told observers he had not always commanded from a safe distance. He took his place beside Jiwan and activated a holographic display. The Council should be aware of relevant military intelligence, Temin said, his voice level and professional. The Creole Dominion has been conducting survey operations in Velshi space for the past 6 months. Their pattern matches previous expansion campaigns. We estimate a 78% probability of military action within the next standard year. The Quellan representative speakers crackled. Commander, the Creole maintain a battle fleet of significant size. Their expansion doctrine is well documented. If they move against the Velshi worlds, will humanity truly commit its forces? Yes, Temin said simply. Even though you will stand alone? Veshka asked, and now his voice carried something like genuine curiosity. The Creole have trade agreements with half the Council. No one will risk economic sanctions to defend 3 worthless water worlds. Your species barely has enough ships to defend your own colonies. You would sacrifice them for strangers? Temin turned to face the Dravic Lord directly. They are not strangers. They are our allies. They asked for our protection, and we gave our word. On Earth, we have a saying that dates back thousands of years. It appears in different languages and different cultures, but the meaning is always the same. Your word is your bond. Break it and you are nothing. Sentiment, Veshka said dismissively. Sentiment does not win wars, Commander. Mathematics wins wars. Logistics. Industrial capacity. The Creole will bring 80 warships. How many can humanity field? 18, Temin admitted. The 3rd Expeditionary Group? The murmuring grew louder now, representatives conferring with their aides and analysts. A battle ratio of more than 4-to-1 was not just disadvantageous, it was suicidal. Several species had survived extinction events with better odds than that. An elderly representative from the Mikal Concordat, species that rarely spoke in council sessions, activated his translation device. Commander Taman, I mean no disrespect to your courage, but my people have survived for 7,000 years by understanding when to fight and when to negotiate. Sometimes wisdom is knowing which battles you cannot win. Taman nodded respectfully. I understand, Representative, but humans learned a different lesson from our history. We learned that the battles you must fight are not always the ones you can win. They are the ones that define who you are. Giwan stepped forward again, placing her hand on the treaty document. The Council does not need to approve this alliance. We are not asking for your permission. We are informing you as a matter of courtesy and record. Humanity has made its decision. When the Creel come, and they will come, the 3rd Expeditionary Group will be there. Lord Veshka studied the two humans for a long moment. His species had conquered worlds and absorbed civilizations. They understood power in all its forms, but this was something outside their calculation frameworks. Finally, he spoke, and his tone had shifted slightly. Very well, Ambassador. Let it be recorded that humanity has entered into a defensive alliance with the Velshi people. And let it also be recorded that the Dravik Empire will not interfere when the Creel test that alliance. What happens then will teach your species a valuable lesson about the price of sentiment. The treaty was filed in the Council archives. The session ended, representatives departing to their ships or quarters. In a small chamber reserved for visiting dignitaries, the Velshi delegate waited. Chieftain Mirasol was small even for her species, barely reaching Jiwan's waist, with blue-green skin that glistened with moisture. She spoke through a translation device that rendered her clicks and whistles into common galactic language. Ambassador Jiwan, Commander Temin, my people are grateful beyond words. But I must ask, Lord Veshka was correct. The Creel will come, and you will stand alone. Your own worlds will be vulnerable. Why do this for us? Guan knelt down so she could look Mirasol in the eye. Because someone should have done it for us. Earth's history is full of moments when the strong preyed on the weak and everyone else looked away because it was not their problem. We learned from that. We learned what kind of civilization we wanted to be. Mirasol's large eyes blinked slowly, moisture gathering at their corners. In Velshi culture, such tears represented overwhelming emotion. Then we will prepare ourselves. If your people fight for us, we will ensure it means something. 3 months passed quickly. Human ships arrived in Velshi space and began coordinating defense patterns with the local militia. Engineers from Earth helped upgrade the colony world's sensor networks. Medical teams trained Velshi doctors in treating combat injuries. Children from both species met via communication channels, sharing stories and pictures. Then, on a Tuesday morning by Earth's calendar, alarms began sounding across all 3 Velshi worlds simultaneously. Long-range sensors detected a massive fleet emerging from hyperspace at the system's edge. 80 Creel warships, each one bristling with weapons and carrying thousands of soldiers, bred for conquest. The transmission came through on all frequencies, broadcast in every known language so there could be no misunderstanding. This is Admiral Zur of the Creel Dominion. The world's designated Velshi Prime, Velshi Secondary, and Velshi Tertiary are hereby claimed under Dominion authority. All inhabitants have 48 standard hours to evacuate. After that deadline, any remaining presence will be destroyed. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. Commander Taman stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display as the Creel fleet began its approach. 18 human ships against 80 Creel vessels. The mathematics were clear. The odds were impossible. But mathematics had never understood humans very well. He opened a channel to the entire 3rd Expeditionary Group. All ships, battle stations, we are not leaving. The 48-hour countdown had reached its final 6 hours when Captain Ajin gathered her crew in the destroyer's main assembly hall. The Indomitable was not the largest ship in the 3rd Expeditionary Group, but it had earned a reputation for being in the hardest fights. Hyjin herself had commanded it for 3 years, and in that time, she had never ordered a retreat. She stood before 214 men and women, all of them volunteers who had joined the fleet knowing they might be called to defend people they had never met. Some were young, fresh from the academy. Others showed gray hair and the weathered faces of career military. All of them wore the same expression now, a mixture of determination and clear-eyed understanding of what was coming. "I'm offering anyone who wants it a transfer to the supply ships," Hyjin said, without preamble. "They are leaving the system in 2 hours, heading back to Earth. No one will question your decision. No one will judge you. Some of you have families, children, parents who depend on you. I am giving you the choice." She paused, letting the words settle. In the silence, someone could hear the low hum of the ship's engines, the distant beep of monitoring systems, the sound of 200 people breathing. A young ensign named Doyon raised his hand. He looked barely old enough to vote, smooth skin and eyes that still held the brightness of someone who believed the universe made sense. Hyjin nodded at him. "Permission to speak, Captain?" "Granted." Doyon stood up, his hands clasped behind his back in proper military posture. "My mother taught me something when I was young. She said that you measure a person not by what they do when it is easy, but by what they do when it costs them something. She said you do not abandon your friends, not ever, no matter what the cost." He looked around at his fellow crew members. "The Velshi are our friends. I am staying." One by one, hands went up across the assembly hall. First dozens, then scores, then nearly everyone. When the count was finished, only 6 people out of 214 requested transfer. Hyjin felt something tighten in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "Transfer approved for those 6. The rest of you, get to your stations. We have a battle to prepare for." On the Creel flagship Domination, Admiral Zor reviewed the tactical situation with growing satisfaction. His species had conquered 47 star systems using the same proven formula. Overwhelming force, clear ultimatums, ruthless execution. Lesser species always chose survival over principle. It was the fundamental mathematics of power. His tactical officer reported the human fleet's position. 18 ships, arranged in a defensive formation around the 3 Velshi colony worlds. Yur's mandibles clicked together in what his species used for laughter. "They actually stayed," he said to his bridge crew. 80 ships to 18, and they stayed. Either humans are the bravest species in the galaxy, or the most foolish. "Perhaps both, Admiral," his second-in-command suggested. Zur considered this. He had studied human military history during the preparation for this campaign. They were aggressive, unpredictable, and had survived a remarkable number of self-inflicted catastrophes. But they had never faced the Creel Dominion in open battle. That was about to change. He opened a direct channel to the human flagship, ensuring the transmission would be recorded and broadcast. The galaxy was watching this confrontation, and Zur understood the value of a demonstration. "Commander Taman of Earth, this is Admiral Zur of the Creel Dominion. You are outnumbered more than 4 to 1. Your species has no strategic interest in this system. These worlds produce nothing of military or economic value. I am offering you one final opportunity. Withdraw your fleet now, and the Dominion will remember humanity's wisdom. We may even consider trade agreements in the future. Fight, and we will remember your foolishness. Your ships will be destroyed, and your species will learn the cost of protecting the unworthy." The response came after only a brief pause. Temen's voice was calm, almost conversational, but something in its tone made Zur's combat instincts sharpen. "Admiral Zur, this is Commander Temen. I appreciate the offer, but I must decline. The Velshi are our allies. We do not measure friendship by strategic advantage. We do not calculate loyalty on a balance sheet. We gave our word to protect these worlds, and a human's word means something. You want this system? You will have to go through us. And I promise you, Admiral, that is going to cost more than you are willing to pay." Zur cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "Begin the attack." The Creel fleet advanced in perfect formation, their ships moving like a school of predators. They had done this hundreds of times before. The pattern was proven. Overwhelming firepower applied with precision and ruthlessness. But as they closed range, something unexpected happened. The human ships did not hold formation. Instead, they scattered like seeds thrown to the wind. each one moving in a different direction with seemingly random acceleration patterns. Creel targeting systems struggled to lock on. The humans were using their smaller size and greater maneuverability to create chaos in the battlefield. The Indomitable dove under a Creel battlecruiser, its weapons firing at point-blank range into the larger ship's engine section. Explosions rippled across the battlecruiser's hull. Before the Creel could return fire, Hyjin had already accelerated away, her ship twisting through space like a dancer. "Target their engines, not their weapons," she ordered her crew. "We cannot match their firepower, so we make them immobile. A ship that cannot maneuver is just an expensive coffin." Across the battle space, the other human ships employed similar tactics. They worked in pairs and trios, coordinating strikes with a fluidity that surprised the Creel commanders. One human destroyer would draw fire while two others attacked from unexpected angles. They used the Velshi colony world's orbital installations as cover, forcing the Creel to either risk collateral damage or limit their firing solutions. But the numbers could not be denied. For every Creel ship damaged, the humans lost advantages they could not afford. 2 human frigates were destroyed in the first hour of battle, their crews dying as their ships broke apart under sustained bombardment. A cruiser lost its main engines and became a stationary target, destroyed minutes later. On the bridge of his flagship, Temin watched the tactical display with a mind that had spent 30 years learning how to read battles. They were inflicting more damage than the Creel had expected, but it was not enough. The mathematics were still against them. They had perhaps 3 hours before the fleet was destroyed, and the Velshi worlds lay defenseless. His communications? Officer looked up suddenly. "Commander, we are detecting new hyperspace signatures. Multiple contacts emerging at the system's edge." Taman felt his stomach tighten. Creel reinforcements would end this battle immediately. But as the sensor data resolved, his officer's face showed confusion rather than fear. "Sir, they are not Creel vessels. I am reading ship types from the Narak Collective, the Prill Commonwealth, the Hask territories, and at least 8 other species. They are broadcasting on all frequencies." The message came through, and it was the same from every ship. Different languages, different voices, but identical meaning. This is the combined fleet of the minor powers. Humanity defended those who could not defend themselves. They stood against overwhelming odds because they gave their word. Today, we return the favor. Any species that attacks our human friends attacks us all. 12 species had sent ships. Most were small forces, a few vessels each. None were military powers that the Council considered significant. But together they added another 43 ships to the battlefield. The odds had shifted. Admiral Zur stared at his tactical display in disbelief. This was not how the galaxy worked. The weak did not help the weak. Minor powers did not risk their limited military assets for sentiment. The calculations that had worked for 3,000 years of Creel expansion suddenly made no sense. His second-in-command spoke quietly. "Admiral, we can still win this battle, but casualties will be significant. The cost may exceed the value of the territory." Yur's mandibles ground together in frustration. A proper Creel commander never retreated. But a dead Creel commander never conquered anything else. He made the calculation that his pride hated, but his training demanded. "All ships, withdraw to hyperspace coordinates. We will return when we have analyzed this situation properly." As the Creel fleet jumped away, cheers erupted across the human ships. But on the Indomitable, Captain Hyjin looked at the casualty reports and felt the weight of 6 destroyed ships and 843 dead crew members. They had won, but the cost had been real. Commander Teeman opened a channel to all ships, human and allied. "To everyone who came here today, humanity offers its deepest gratitude. You did not have to come, but you did. That is something we will never forget," a voice responded, one of the Narak captains. "Commander, you came when the Velshi asked for help, even though it cost you dearly. You taught us that the galaxy can be better than it is. We are simply trying to learn the lesson." 3 months after the battle at Velshi Space, journalist Soman sat in a small cafe on Council Station, reviewing her research files for the 100th time. The story of the battle had dominated galactic news for weeks. but she wanted to understand the deeper pattern. 12 species had come to humanity's aid, risking their ships and crews for people they barely knew. That kind of behavior did not appear randomly. She had started investigating the species that had answered humanity's call. The Narok Collective, the Prill Commonwealth, the Hask Territories, and 9 others. On the surface, they had nothing in common. Different biologies, different cultures, different star systems, scattered across the galaxy. But as Salmon dug deeper, she found the connection. Every single one of them had been helped by humans in the past. The Narok Collective had faced starvation 7 years ago when a fungal blight destroyed their grain crops across 3 colony worlds. The galactic community had offered loans with strict repayment terms and interest, rates that would have crippled the Narok economy for generations. Humanity had simply sent 30 cargo ships filled with food and medical supplies. When Narok officials asked about payment, the human delegation said they could repay humanity by helping someone else when the opportunity came. The Prill Commonwealth had suffered an outbreak of plague that killed 15% of their population. Galactic medical corporations offered treatments, but the cost would have bankrupted the Commonwealth. 200 human doctors and nurses volunteered to spend 2 years on Prill worlds, working without pay, teaching local medical staff how to produce the treatments themselves. When the plague ended, the humans went home. They never asked for anything in return. The Hask Territories faced extinction when their star began emitting dangerous levels of radiation. They had neither the ships nor the technology to relocate their population of 4 billion. Human engineers arrived with detailed plans for radiation shielding and helped construct it across 15 Hask worlds. The project took 4 years and cost humanity billions in resources. When it was done, the lead engineer said only that he hoped someone would do the same for Earth if it ever faced similar danger. Soman found story after story like this. Small interventions that never made galactic news. Humanity had been helping species for 3 decades, quietly and without demanding recognition. They saw problems and fixed them, saw suffering and eased it, saw people who needed help and provided it. None of it was strategic. None of it generated profit. None of it followed the established rules of galactic politics. She compiled her findings into a comprehensive report and submitted it to the Council for review. Within hours, she received a summons to present her research at an emergency session. Apparently, the major powers wanted answers. The council chamber was even more crowded than usual when Soman arrived. Representatives from every major civilization filled the seats, and the air crackled with tension. Lord Veshka of the Dravik Empire spoke first, his voice carrying its usual authority but with an edge of genuine confusion. Journalist Soman, your report has been distributed to all council members. We wish to understand. Is humanity conducting a coordinated soft power campaign? Are these interventions part of a long-term strategy to build a network of dependent client states? Salmon shook her head. No, Lord Veshka. There is no central coordination. Individual humans, human organizations, and sometimes Earth government agencies see problems and respond to them. But there is no master plan. They help because they believe it is the right thing to do. The Quellan representative's speakers activated. That makes no logical sense. Resources are finite. Every civilization must prioritize its own survival and growth. Altruism on this scale is economically unsustainable. Perhaps for some species, a new voice said, but humans are different. The speaker was Kiwan, a human civilian who served as a cultural advisor to the council. He was a thin man with tired eyes who had spent 15 years trying to explain humanity. 2 species that thought in very different patterns. He approached the central podium with the careful steps of someone who knew he was about to make people uncomfortable. The council has asked me to provide context for humanity's behavior, Kiwan began. I will try to be clear. Earth's history is not pleasant. We spent thousands of years killing each other over resources, territory, religion, ideology, and sometimes just because we were afraid of people who looked different. We built weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We ignored suffering when it was convenient. We walked past people who needed help because they were not our responsibility. He paused, and the silence in the chamber was profound. We failed each other again and again. And every time we failed, we paid a price. Not just in lives lost, but in what we became. A species that could ignore suffering becomes a species that creates suffering. We learned slowly and painfully that civilization is not measured by how tall your buildings are or how fast your ships can travel. It is measured by whether you help someone who can never repay you. Lord Veshka's tail scraped the floor. Advisor Kiwan's sentiment is admirable in poetry, but we are discussing the practical operation of a galactic civilization. The Dravik Empire has survived for 3,000 years by understanding that resources must be allocated efficiently. The strong support the strong. That is how empires are built. Yes, Kiwan agreed quietly. That is how empires are built. But is that how civilizations are built? Real civilizations. The kind that last not because they dominate, but because people want to be part of them. The question hung in the air. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The Mikul Concordat representative who had spoken at the original treaty session activated his translation device. Visor Kiwan. My people survived 7,000 years by being practical. We help those who can help us in return. We form alliances based on mutual benefit. This has kept us alive through countless conflicts. What you describe sounds noble, but nobility does not deflect weapons fire. Kiwan nodded respectfully. You are correct, Representative. Nobility alone does not win battles. But it does build the kind of trust that makes 12 species risk their fleets to help a friend. The Creel had superior numbers, superior firepower, and a proven strategy. They should have one. They did not win because humans had something they could not calculate. We had people who remembered when we helped them, and who chose to return the favor, even though it cost them. He pulled up a holographic display showing the battle at Velshi Space. Look at this again. Not as a military engagement, but as a statement. 43 ships from 12 different species, most of them small powers that the Council barely acknowledges. They came because humanity taught them that someone will stand up for the defenseless. They came because they finally saw what a galaxy could look like if the strong chose to protect the weak instead of exploiting them. A representative from the Orthani Collective, a species known for their mathematical precision, spoke up. But this is inefficient. If every species devoted resources to protecting others without strategic return, galactic productivity would decline by our estimates by 43%. Productivity of what? Kiwan asked. Territory conquered. Resources extracted. Species subjugated. Yes, those numbers would decline. But what about the productivity of innovation? Of cooperation? Of building something that lasts because people want it to last, not because they fear the consequences of rebellion? The debate continued for hours. Some representatives insisted that humanity's approach was unsustainable. Others argued that it was naive. A few suggested that it was a sophisticated manipulation strategy that the Council had not yet decoded. But none of them could explain away the simple fact that 12 species had risked everything for humanity, because humanity had helped them when no one else would. Finally, Ambassador Jiwan stood to address the Council. She had been silent throughout the session, letting Kiwan and Soman present the evidence. Now she spoke with quiet conviction. The Council keeps asking what humanity's strategy is, what our long-term plan is, what we hope to gain. I will tell you the truth. We have no master strategy. We help because someone needs help. We protect because someone needs protection. We give because someone needs what we have. That is the entire calculation. And if that makes us strange by galactic standards, then we will be strange. She looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. But I will say this. The Creel came with 80 ships and absolute confidence in their victory. They left because the cost became too high. Not the military cost, but the political cost. Because every species watching that battle saw what happened when someone stood up to protect the defenseless. They saw that it was possible, and some of them decided they wanted to be part of that possibility. Lord Veshka stood, his massive form dominating the chamber. For a long moment, he studied Giwan with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. When he spoke, his voice carried a new tone. Ambassador Giwan, the Dravik Empire, has never been accused of sentimentality. We are practical to the point of ruthlessness. But we are not fools. We recognize strength when we see it, even if it wears an unexpected face. Humanity has demonstrated something valuable. Not military might, not economic power, but something perhaps more useful. Reliability.
Oh.
He paused, letting the words settle. Every species in this chamber knows that alliances shift with political winds. Trade partners become enemies when the profit margins change. But humanity has shown that when you give your word, you keep it. When you make a promise, you honor it, even when it costs you dearly. That is rare in the galaxy. That is valuable. Implications rippled through the chamber like a wave. The colony world. New Jeju had been humanity's pride for nearly a decade. Established on a planet with Earth-like gravity and breathable atmosphere, it had grown from a frontier outpost into a thriving community of 80,000 humans and another 40,000 colonists from allied species. The city center featured architecture from a dozen different cultures. Markets where traders sold goods from across the galaxy. And schools where human children learned alongside Velshi, Narok, and Prill youngsters. It was also, according to intelligence reports that landed on Colonel Minha's desk one Tuesday morning, the target of the Vrin Collective's latest operation. Minha read the report 3 times, her jaw tightening with each pass. The Vrin were not a military power. They were criminals, the kind of organization that had existed in the shadows of galactic civilization for centuries. Slavers, smugglers, extortionists, they had learned to avoid direct confrontation with major powers, instead targeting colonies and stations that lacked heavy defenses, apparently. They had decided that humanity's protective nature made them predictable, and predictable targets were profitable targets. The report was clear. 43 human civilians had been taken from their homes during the night cycle. Security footage showed Vrin operatives using advanced stealth technology to bypass colony defenses. But they had not stopped with humans. Another 200 colonists from allied species living in New Jeju had been taken as well. The ransom demand had arrived 6 hours ago. Minha called an emergency meeting of her senior staff. The Special Operations Division occupied a secure section of Earth's lunar base. The officers who gathered in the conference room represented the best tactical minds humanity had developed. They studied the ransom terms in silence. "They want technology transfers," said Major Bora, the intelligence officer. "Specifically, our stealth ship designs and medical fabrication blueprints. They want territorial concessions in 3 systems we have exploration claims on. And they want a public statement that humanity will not interfere with Vrin operations in sectors 9 through 14. "In exchange for what?" asked Captain Seok, who commanded the assault teams. "The safe return of all hostages, human and non-human alike." Minha leaned back in her chair, her fingers drumming on the table. "What does Earth Command recommend?" Bora pulled up another file. "They recommend we negotiate. The technology they are asking for is not critical, and the territorial concessions are in systems we have not developed yet. The cost of paying the ransom is significantly less than the cost of a military operation against the Vern stronghold. And the 200 non-human hostages? Earth Command's analysis suggests the Vrin included them specifically to test whether humanity's protective instincts extend beyond our own species." A room fell silent. Everyone present understood the implications. This was not just a kidnapping. It was a test of who humanity claimed to be. If they paid the ransom only for human hostages and left the others behind, every species in the galaxy would learn that human principles had limits, that human protection came with conditions. Colonel Minha stood up and walked to the window overlooking the lunar surface. Earth hung in the black sky, blue and white and beautiful. She thought about the new Jeju colony, about children from different species playing together in schools, about families who had built lives together across cultural boundaries that the galaxy said should not be crossed. "Get me Sergeant Junho," she said quietly. Junho arrived 20 minutes later. He was a compact man with the scarred hands of someone who had done close-quarters combat on 4 different worlds. His service record listed 17 successful rescue operations, and a commendation for valor that he never wore on his uniform because, as he once explained, doing your job was not something that required decoration, Sergeant. Do you have family on New Jeju? Minha asked. My sister, Colonel. She teaches at the primary school. Mathematics. I'm sorry. She was among those taken. Junho's expression did not change, but something in his eyes went very cold. What are your orders, Colonel? I am not ordering anything yet. I need to know if you can be objective on this operation. My sister taught Velshi children and Narok children alongside human children, Junho said carefully. She never saw a difference. If humans go in to rescue only the human hostages, I will have failed to honor what she believed in. So no, Colonel, I cannot be objective, but I can be effective. Minha nodded slowly. Intelligence Officer Yoonji, what do we know about the Vrin stronghold? Yoonji was a slight woman who looked more like a university professor than a military officer. But her talent for breaking security systems had become legendary in the Special Operations Division. She pulled up holographic schematics of an asteroid base hidden in an unmapped region of space. The base is considered impenetrable, Yoonji said. Triple-layer shielding, automated defense platforms, and a garrison of 3,000 Vrin soldiers. They have held this position for 40 years without anyone successfully attacking it. Can you get us in? Minha asked. Yoonji smiled slightly. Colonel, I have been analyzing their security network for the past 6 hours. They built their defenses, assuming attackers would come from outside. They did not consider that someone might already be inside their communication systems. Explain. The Vrin use a centralized control network for their entire base. Every door, every sensor, every weapon platform connects to a single main computer. It is efficient, but it creates a vulnerability. If I can access that network, I can control their entire facility. Captain Seok leaned forward. How do we get you access? That is the interesting part. The Vrin send supply ships to the base every 3 weeks. The next one departs in 48 hours. If we can infiltrate that ship, we can physically access their network from inside their own security perimeter. The plan took shape over the next 12 hours. It was dangerous, complex, and depended on dozens of factors going exactly right. But it was also the only way to extract all the hostages without condemning 200 non-humans to slavery or death. Earth Command sent a message asking Minha to reconsider. The risk was too high. The cost of failure would be catastrophic. But Minha replied with a simple question. If humans would not risk everything to save people who trusted them, what were human principles worth? The operation launched 36 hours later. A team of 40 Special Operations soldiers infiltrated the Vrin supply ship using Yoonji's forged credentials. They rode in cargo containers designed to mask life signs, breathing recycled air and waiting in absolute darkness for 6 hours while the ship made its approach. When they emerged inside the Vrin base, Yoonji went to work on the security network while the assault teams moved into position. Yoonho led a squad toward the hostage-holding area, moving through corridors that should have been filled with automated defenses and security alerts, but Yangji had turned the Vrin zone systems against them. Doors opened on command. Cameras showed false images. Defense platforms remained dormant. The hostages were held in a large chamber designed for cargo storage. 43 humans and 200 non-humans, all of them showing signs of rough treatment but alive. Junho found his sister among them. She looked up, saw her brother in combat gear, and smiled through split lips. Took you long enough, she whispered. Had to make sure we could get everyone out, Junho replied. Not just you. The extraction was surgical. Every guard was neutralized with precision. Every escape route was secured. The Vrin leadership, confident in their impenetrable fortress, never realized they were under attack until it was too late. By the time alarms finally sounded, the hostages were already aboard human ships and jumping to hyperspace. But Minha had not just ordered a rescue, she had ordered a message. The Special Operations team systematically dismantled the Vrin leadership structure, capturing or eliminating every senior officer in the organization. They destroyed the base's weapons platforms, disabled its shields, and left it crippled. The Vryn leader was captured alive. A creature called Kes, who had built an empire of suffering over 30 years. Minhas stood before him in the base's command center and asked a simple question. "Why did you target our colony?" Kes laughed, though blood ran from his mouth. "Because humans are predictable. You protect your people. That makes you weak. We calculated the ransom you would pay, and it was worth the risk." Sergeant Junho stepped forward. "You miscalculated. We protect our people. All our people, human, Velshi, Narak, Prill, and every species that lives under our protection. You did not just threaten humans. You threatened our friends. That was your mistake. This will not end well for you," Kes said. "The Vryn Collective has operations across the galaxy. You cannot fight us everywhere." Minha looked at him with eyes that had seen too many battles. "Watch us." The news spread through the galactic underworld within days. The Vryn Collective had been broken by a single human military operation. Their impenetrable fortress had fallen in one night. Their leadership was either captured or dead. And the message was clear to every criminal organization that preyed on the weak. Humans would come for you. If you harmed those under their protection, distance did not matter. Defenses did not matter. Numbers did not matter. 2 weeks later, Ambassador Giwan received an unexpected communication. Lord Veshka of the Dravik Empire requested a private meeting. They met in a secure room on Council Station, just the two of them. "Ambassador," Veshka began, "the Dravik Empire wishes to propose a formal defensive alliance with humanity." Chuan raised an eyebrow. "That is unexpected, Lord Veshka. 3 months ago, you warned us about the cost of sentiment. 3 months ago, I did not understand. I thought strength was measured in fleet size and resource control. But I have watched humanity very carefully since the Velshi incident. You do not protect allies because it is profitable. You protect them because it is who you are. And that makes you the most reliable partner in the galaxy." He stood, his massive form somehow managing to convey respect despite the physical difference. "The Dravik have survived 3,000 years by recognizing strength. We finally understand that strength is not just military power. It is knowing that when you make a promise, you will keep it, no matter the cost." The alert came during what Earth called early morning hours. Though time meant little on Council Station, where representatives from 47 species maintained different biological schedules. Sensors at the edge of mapped space had detected something that sent every military analyst into emergency sessions. A fleet was approaching from dark space, moving with purpose and terrible speed. The Devourers had returned, Ambassador. Guan stood in the council chamber 6 hours later, watching holographic projections of the approaching threat. The displays showed vast mechanical ships, each one larger than anything built by organic civilizations. They moved in formations that suggested intelligence, but no one had ever successfully communicated with them. They simply arrived, consumed everything of value, and moved on. "We have historical records of 3 previous Devourer incursions," the Quellan representative reported. "Each time, they destroyed entire civilizations before galactic forces could coordinate a response. The last incident was 800 years ago. They consumed 12 colony worlds and 7 major population centers before retreating back into dark space." Lord Veshka studied the tactical projections. Their current trajectory will take them through the Outer Rim territories. 47 species maintain settlements in that region. Combined population, approximately 6 trillion souls. A representative from the Mikkel Concordat activated his translation device. "The Council must address practical considerations. The cost of defending the Outer Rim would be enormous. We would need to deploy nearly 70% of our combined military forces. Even then, success is not guaranteed. And the strategic value of the Outer Rim is limited. Most settlements there are small colonies, research stations, or refugee populations." The Quellan agreed. "Economic analysis suggests evacuation is the more sustainable option. We can relocate the populations to inner territories. The loss of infrastructure and territory is regrettable. But preserving life while maintaining defensive capacity for core worlds is the logical choice. You want to abandon them? Guan said quietly. You want to save as many lives as possible, the McCall representative replied. Ambassador Guan, this is not about abandonment. This is about mathematics. We cannot defend everything. We must make difficult choices. The debate continued for hours. Projections and models filled the air, each one demonstrating in cold numbers why defending the outer rim made no strategic sense. The cost was too high. The risk was too great. The populations there were mostly from smaller species, refugees. Colonists who had fled overcrowding or persecution in core territories. Defending them would leave the heart of galactic civilization vulnerable. Admiral Eho arrived during the 8th hour of debate. He was an older man, his hair completely gray, with deep lines around his eyes from decades of command. He had fought in every major human military engagement since Earth joined the galactic community, and his reputation for tactical brilliance was matched only by his reputation for honesty. He listened to the evacuation plans for 10 minutes before standing to speak. Would like to ask each member of this council a question, Yeho said, his voice cutting through the analytical discussion like a blade. If your homeworld was out there in the outer rim, if your families and your children were the ones being written off as acceptable losses, would you want someone to abandon you because the mathematics said you were not worth saving? The silence that followed was profound. I thought not, Yeho continued. Yet we sit here in comfortable chambers, safe in the heart of galactic territory, discussing how many trillion lives we can afford to sacrifice to preserve our own security. We dress it up in economic analysis and strategic projections, but we are making a very simple choice. Are some lives worth more than others? Lord Veshka shifted his massive weight. Admiral, emotion does not change military reality. The Devourers are an existential threat. If we overcommit to defending the outer rim and fail, we lose everything, including the very people we are trying to save. Perhaps Yeho acknowledged, but I have learned something in my years of service. You do not build a civilization worth saving by calculating whose lives are expendable. You build it by standing up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. Even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. He activated a display showing the 47 species that called the outer rim home. These are not numbers on a casualty projection. They are people, families, children who were born on those worlds and know no other home. And we are proposing to tell them that their lives are worth less than ours because they live on the wrong side of a strategic boundary. The council voted 3 hours later. By a narrow margin, they approved the evacuation plan. The outer rim would be abandoned to the Devourers. Refugee ships would begin relocating populations immediately. It was, the majority argued, it's the only practical choice. Humanity voted against it. Admiral Yeho stood alone in the council chamber after the session ended. Ambassador Jiwan approached him quietly. Earth Command wants to know what you need, she said. Everything, Yeho replied. Every ship, every soldier, every resource we can spare. We are going to the outer rim, and we are going to defend it. The council just voted for evacuation. The council can do what it wants. Humanity made a different choice. The mobilization began within hours. Every available human warship received deployment orders. Reserve units were activated. Construction yards accelerated production schedules. It was the largest military operation humanity had ever undertaken, and everyone knew the odds were terrible. But something unexpected happened. As human ships began massing at rally points, they were joined by others. The Velshi sent their entire fleet, small as it was, the Narok, the Prill, the Hask, and every other species that humanity had helped over the years arrived with whatever forces they could muster. Even some major powers watching the gathering fleet made decisions that surprised their own populations. The Dravik Empire, which had voted for evacuation in council, sent 3 full battle fleets. Lord Veshkas's message to Yeho was brief. Humanity taught us that reliability matters more than calculations. The Dravik Empire honors its alliances. The Quellan, ancient and logical, sent their dreadnoughts with a message that their poets would remember for centuries. We have spent 8,000 years optimizing for survival. Humanity has reminded us that survival without honor is not worth the effort. Species that had never had contact with humanity arrived simply because they understood what the battle represented. If the strong would not protect the weak, then civilization was just organized predation. The galaxy had a chance to be better than that. The defensive perimeter was established 3 light-years from the outer rim's closest inhabited world. 247 ships from 19 species, facing a devourer fleet that sensors estimated at over 400 vessels. The mathematics said it was impossible. But mathematics had never understood the galaxy that was being born in that moment. Admiral Yeho commanded from the bridge of the Human. Flagship determination? He opened a channel to all ships, every species, every crew member about to fight for people they had mostly never met. To everyone here today, I want you to understand what we are about to do. We are not fighting for territory. We are not fighting for resources. We are fighting because 47 species live in the outer rim, and they asked us to protect them. Some people will say we should have calculated the odds and walked away. But we are here because we believe the galaxy should be a place where the strong protect the weak, where someone stands up when others cannot, where your value is not measured by what you can offer in return, but by the simple fact that you exist. Paused. Looking at the tactical displays showing the approaching devourer fleet, today we teach the galaxy what that means. Today we show them why humans protect their allies at any cost. Not because it is profitable, not because it is strategic, but because it is right. All ships, battle stations. The battle that followed would be studied by military academicians for centuries. The devourers came in waves, their mechanical precision meeting the chaotic creativity of organic defenders. Ships were lost. Entire battle groups were destroyed. The casualty count climbed into numbers that made commanders sick. On the 3rd day of fighting, Admiral Yeho's flagship was crippled by a direct hit. Life support was failing. The bridge was exposed to vacuum. His officers begged him to evacuate. Instead, he ordered the ship to ram the nearest devourer mothership, using the last of its engines to accelerate into collision. Someone has to stand, were his last transmitted words. Might as well be us. The explosion destroyed both vessels and opened a gap in the devourer formation. Rear Admiral Hai Jin, who had commanded at Velshi Prime years before, took overall command. She was aboard the Indomitable still, and her voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too many friends die. Admiral Yeho taught us that battles are not won by calculations. They are won by people who refuse to quit. All ships pressed the attack. The tide turned slowly, not because the defenders gained a numerical advantage, but because the devourers had never faced resistance like this before. Species that should have retreated kept fighting. Ships that should have been destroyed found ways too.